Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy. It is not every day that we go live for 2 live streams in a row. Usually only when there's some big movie news or a big shake-up in the cinema-going world, and there absolutely has been today. Amazon have made an offer to buy MGM, a relatively small amount, 8.45 billion, and MGM have accepted. So the entire catalogue of MGM films, well, we'll get into that. It's complex. I don't even think we grasp how all the asterisks and all the different points and all the different offshoots. We're going to try and talk it out. We're going to try and go through this thing, but this is mostly going to be our opinions on the acquisition. Everything's just getting bought up nowadays, isn't it? It's like they're all just playing on a big monopoly board, and MGM was probably one of the priciest ones to go, but it's gone to Amazon, and we're here to talk about it. So I guess that'll do it for the intro. I'll pass over to George now to do a quick breeze through of the socials, and then we're going to start talking about this thing.
Yeah, so when I say comment below your thoughts on Amazon's takeover, don't leave us a review of the takeover. Ask us questions we probably don't have the answers for, but we've got a plan, we've got a schedule, we've got a couple of quotes from Amazon staff, we've done a bit of digging, we've looked at their 2021 slate, what's happening with that. We're obviously going to mention some of the films that Amazon today have name dropped that they now have the rights to. Chris knows a bit about the MGM rights being sold in the 80s, a bit about Universal artists being bought by MGM also in the 70s. And I think that's going to be all the waffle, all the really hard stuff. But there is going to be, as you can imagine, a big discussion at the end on Bond, which has probably been, they call it the crown jewel in most descriptions today. So we're going to talk about Rocky and Creed at some point as well. But we'll have the big finale be about the Bond discussion, because I think that is really the most important part of it. That being said, though, if you're new to us, if you've just been searching the news and want to find out something, we don't obviously just do news videos. We do reviews, films. We did Quiet Place Part 2 literally just under an hour ago. We started that live stream. So a lot of things coming up. And we're in the middle of a Bond we're in the middle. We're a quarter of the way through a Bond retrospective series. So the timing is fresh. If you want to find out more, find us on our social media, as well as hitting the subscribe button, which is Facebook at Cinema Savvy, Twitter at cinema_savvy, letterboxd.com, and we have a link to our TeePublic score in the description below. But we are, of course, talking the Amazon takeover MGM. I want to jump in straight away. Sorry, guys. I was gutted. This morning I read a really good article, and it was like how the James Bond rights and Eon could affect Amazon wanting to buy them. And I woke up in a really good mood. And then less than 6 hours later, the purchase was done. So I was like, well, that was a waste of a morning read. But no, I'll go to you first. What are your thoughts on the takeover, the magnitude of it?
It's a big thing happening, I'll be honest. I'm trying to think of probably the biggest cinematic takeover. I guess you go back to 20th Century Fox being taken over by Disney, but this is huge, and I'm still undecided on it. There are parts of it which I think could be good, but I don't like the general outline of it in the first place. I don't like the fact that it's another studio buying up another smaller studio and making it so the market is confined down to 4 or 5 kind of big properties that own it. I'm not a fan of that. I'm also not really a fan of one of their statements where they said they're possibly going to be kind of reinterpreting some of the previous properties. I feel like they should just kind of go ahead with what they've previously kind of go with new ideas, and if there are properties that are already kind of withstanding things like Bond, then yeah, sure, continue that legacy on, go forward with that. If there are things that are still in there, I know they have a Legally Blonde film in the works for next year. They've got franchises which could be restarted, but with films that stand alone in their category and in their catalog, I don't think they should touch it, and I'm very nervous about that kind of stuff. Other than that, it's probably more money going into the film industry. So, I mean, I can't say that it's going to be completely bad. I'm just a little bit kind of in the middle at the moment, trying to still figure it out myself.
Well, I think Carl's nailed it, to be honest. I'm going to bring up Carl's comment right now. Is this Amazon's big push to catch up with Netflix and Disney Plus? Yeah, I mean, it's, we've had the nuclear arms race, we've had the space race, and now it's the streaming service race, it seems like. And I think that's just the way that movies are heading, for better or worse. We have cinemas for right now. Who knows what post-apocalyptic future we're going to live in where movie theaters cease to be a thing. We've seen it now. Obviously, COVID sort of like forced a lot of studios' hands to get things out on streaming services. I like to think that movie theaters are always going to be here to stay, but it is kind of just the landscape that we exist in at the moment are these sort of like upper echelons of all these massive conglomerate companies, ones that have just been mentioned: Disney, Netflix, Amazon. There are some other outliers as well, stuff like Paramount Plus. You've got Apple in the mix. You've got all different kinds of ones. You name it, there's probably a streaming service for it now. But those are definitely the big three, and it just seems which company can snap up the most amount of properties, beloved franchises, classic films. Anything there is up for grabs, get it, because it's going to bolster their online library of content, really. We're probably going to get into it later because, granted, I don't have Amazon Prime myself, so I don't know the entire library of stuff that they have on there. But certainly for me, compared to Netflix and Disney Plus, it doesn't seem like they've got a whole bunch of stuff on there. We know that Amazon have got the Middle-earth TV series coming out. I think it's later this year, isn't it? Or definitely into next year for 5 seasons. And this is just, a lot more notches on their belt, shall we say. But the properties that they've picked up are sort of like very classic films, very sort of like old school cinema. That's what MGM very much was back in the day, sort of like classic Hollywood. You always think of that roaring lion when you've got like an old classic film, and they've got a whole bunch of them now. We'll get into which ones they do and do not have, and which ones they kind of have but only 50% of. I'm just worried that this means we're going to get a whole bunch of spin-offs, a whole bunch of TV shows, and a whole bunch of remakes of films that probably should never be remade. But that's the world we live in. I'm all doom and gloom. I'm forever the pessimist, and this hasn't helped my pessimism.
Yeah, I'm in a very weird state with this because I think all of us predicted last year that one of the classic studios will be bought out. I thought it'd be Paramount. They sold every. We just said this in Quiet Place 2. They sold every film over lockdown except Top Gun 2 and A Quiet Place Part 2. And every time, and it was Amazon that were picking up Coming to America. It was Amazon that picked up Without Remorse, and I just thought that when's Paramount just going to sell up? And then Paramount Plus now is a thing and became a thing. So this really doesn't surprise me. Amazon, it's Jeff Bezos, man. This is a scumbag guy that's like, what, he's worth like 180 billion, and he has his drivers pissing in bottles when they're delivering parcels, when they're getting paid below minimum wage and shit like that. So I'm just going to say straight. Not that most giant corporations are terrible, but truly of the studio chains and that, none of them are worse than Amazon as far as I'm concerned, of the mega ones that do get involved with film. And this is my kind of issue with it, that the concept of MGM getting sold, I'm not going to lie, I've been very selfish about, because I only really care about 2 franchises as a part of it. And I know it's more the history of cinema. And I saw an amazing Facebook post the other week, and it was basically a graph of like Disney Plus, Netflix, and Prime. And it was like library content by decade, and it was like percentage. And Netflix was like 60% 2010s. And these smaller gaps, and once it gets like pre-1950s, it's non-existent on any of them, except a little bit on Disney with the old library. And I've always wondered with MGM that whoever's going to be the one to buy them, or if they did get sold, that Paramount too, there are libraries of thousands of films that needs to have somewhere to stream. And we always talk about not seeing enough classic films and whatnot. There aren't even classic films from that time that these guys own the rights to. And there should be a service for them to be watched on it. It shouldn't be having to people to sort of research for a couple of days how to find a copy, let alone see if one exists. And the concept of all these old films on one of the big 3 streaming services is something I'm absolutely down for. I think it's the right thing the industry needs. However, I'm worried with Amazon, and I'm going to bring up a quote here from Mike Hopkins, who's been integral in, I think he's president of Amazon Studios. He put, "The real financial value behind this deal is the treasure trove of IP in the deep catalogue that we plan to reimagine and develop together with MGM's talented team." Martin Scorsese went on a rant, as he always does, as he hates that people call the film industry content. I don't think I've seen them referred to as treasure trove of IP before. That's a new one even for me. And, I do sit here and think, is it reboots? Is it giving them a place to be? And is it, of course, it's money orientated. It always will be. But there's something slightly opposite. But at the same time, I look at the big 3 and kind of what you both said about Carl too, that Amazon's library is trash. Like, there are good films on there, don't get me wrong, but Invincible didn't get a marketing campaign. I've not seen it yet. I know about it via word of mouth. The Coming to America was terrible. They started marketing like 2 weeks before it came out. Amazon Studios marketing is not good. When they had Oscar films, I think The Beautiful Boy, which was incredible, they didn't market it. No one sees it. And this is my concern because Amazon would be involved in the marketing of all. However, I will say of those, I don't really count Disney Plus as sort of a cinema because they'll be at cinemas, but Netflix does not like the cinema formula. They fall out of a lot of companies. They probably would have won an Oscar by now if they did do cinema releases properly. Getting The Irishman on one screening a week for 2 weeks and then going on Netflix is not a way. Whereas I will say that Amazon has put films out at the cinema. They have been open to showing them. Even after they've been on Prime, they're putting them at cinemas like Cinema Sound of Metal. And if they're committed to cinema releases, then I don't have as much a problem. Now they were talking about a 45-day streaming window, which is going to be a really big thing. So I trust Amazon more than Netflix to get these newer films out into cinemas. But Amazon, I think maybe it's more their corporate behind the scenes that I'm more concerned about than Netflix. I don't know if that's just me.
Yeah, I'm worried. I'm going to bring up Carl's comment again here because I completely agree with this. I think this is a very disturbing look into our future. It's like going in a time machine, waking up in the future, and movie theaters are all dilapidated and just all and I think it's going to happen. Blockbusters such as Marvel and Star Wars will always play in the cinema, but I think we'll see a decline in smaller films reaching a wider audience as they'll just get stuck on streaming. And we've been seeing that. You mentioned The Irishman there. Now I know that there is kind of a clause where technically they do get a week or 2 weeks maximum in the cinema, so they technically do get a cinema release, but you can't really call that a cinema release. Or even if it is, it's in very select cinemas and it's not for wide release. Most people are just going to wait until things just hit streaming. And I've been seeing it recently with big franchises like Marvel, like Star Wars, mostly just Disney. In all honesty, you see those top 10 films of the year in terms of gross, and they like 8 out of 10 of them always tend to be Disney, maybe even 10 out of 10 with them now. It's all these big tentpole films by one company, and it's terrifying because where's the competition? Where's creativity, like a vision that smaller directors might have, which, if given the backing, could become one of the greatest films of all time or a great franchise in its own. Original properties, we've been saying this for years now, are becoming a thing of the past. And I think this is just another nail in the coffin for that. It's going to be familiar territory. It's going to be films that have already been made, that get remade, that get reimagined, as they've said, repackaged, and IP. It doesn't seem like there's any passion behind it. And I know that the companies, and I know that even back in the day when the classic films were made, they were still a company, and we have to be mindful of that. But it's a bunch of suits, isn't it? It's just, they don't care about the story being told, the impact it's going to have. They just want to make that 8.45 billion back. And to be honest, if I made a purchase of 8.45 billion, I'd want that money back in my account as quickly as possible. So they are going to try their damnedest to get this off the ground. We have a comment from Caleb as well to bring up really quickly, because we'll probably move on to the actual IPs that they have acquired through this, because as I mentioned at the beginning, it's complicated. He's put, I just hope this jumpstarts the Stargate franchise. Like, other than the weird series of short films, it's been dead since Stargate Universe got cancelled. So I imagine that you'll probably see more of that, whether it's another TV show or a film or both. They're probably just going to be rushing everything out at this moment.
I'd say anything that's franchisable from the list of films they've got, they will absolutely turn into a franchise. We'll go through the list in a second, but like, all these kind of filming opportunities, they can now go, we now have that property, we're just going to pump out as much as possible, whether that be TV shows, whether that be films. And I just feel so meh about it. It's so like, there's going to be more content, but it's going to be pumped through the same system that all the other content is done. And I think Carl's put it in the comments here. For all the tech Amazon has created, Amazon Prime Video definitely has the worst interface, nearly impossible to find what's currently been added. I went on there the other day just to finish up watching Invincible. And when you click on the main menu, it doesn't come up with the things that you've previously watched, the things that you're halfway through watching or anything like that. What it comes up with first is things that you can rent, things that you have to pay extra on top of your Amazon Prime membership to actually get access to, which is crazy. And it's so differently separated. It's so hard to search for something that you actually want to see. It's so just horrible, and adding more films to that interface isn't going to help that or change that. I genuinely don't think this is going to bring more people to the Amazon Prime platform. It might do better for Amazon Studios and their cinema releases and stuff like that. But even with the old films on there, their interface and kind of the way they've set up their website, it's not going to attract more people in. People like the simplicity that comes with things like Netflix, things like Disney Plus, where you can type in whatever you want and go and see that immediately. They don't want to be put through the ringer of, oh, have a look at these things that you can rent and stuff like that on top of what you've already kind of paid for in your service. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's not user-friendly at all. Just really quickly, like when I last went on it with my friend, I was saying like, oh, they've got loads of films on here. And he says, yeah, but you have to click on them to see whether they are free as part of it or whether you have to pay, as you mentioned, extra to rent them. It's a really, I think it's definitely the worst interface out of all the streaming services at the moment.
Saying that, won't Amazon just like put up all these films to rent? Or would they split them between things
they probably can anyway? I'd imagine they probably can. My issue, the interface stuff does my head. It's one of the reasons I actually dropped it. So they did the auto renew, and I was like, for fuck's sake. And then I was like, I've not used it. Can you just give me my money back? And they did. So I was pretty buzzing with that because you can't do anything. I've had money go out my account, and my sister's like, sorry, I thought you owned it. So I pressed the button and it bought it. I was like, oh, well, I'm not paying to watch Bridget Jones's Baby, so send it to me, please. And yeah, it's horrible to look at. And you look at Disney Plus, and maybe I'm a bit of a Disney hype merchant sometimes, but that app is fucking stunning. I know it's really sad. You're on Netflix, it's like, oh, look, I'm literally just pausing to get my phone out to Google something, and they start playing the film. Like, shut up. So, like, Netflix, you have to wiggle over and remove settings here, there, and everywhere. And whereas Disney Plus is like, here is the menu, here is how you do it, here is their posters, and it's lovely to look at, and it's easy. Franchises right at the top, the main reason everyone's clicking on it. Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, and Star, I guess, is what they call 20th Century Fox. And I do sit there and think, really important comparison is that Disney, the bid was accepted on, it was the day Last Shadow came out, 2017. That first went ahead with 20th Century Fox, and obviously it's not happening in the States yet because of rights deals and stuff, but my biggest issue is how they handle stuff. And I think you kind of want to point there that I think that this is just for Prime. I think this is for Prime more than Amazon Studios, that if they're committed for funding these, they're committed to the Prime stuff. And the day they can boast that we've got 1920s to 1950s or what they do have from that library, I think it won't be a massive amount, but a lot of subscribers would come in for that. I think it'd be a lot of people that would rather help something that would have old films, and we'll get to Bond at the end, which will, without a shadow of a doubt, be the biggest Amazon Prime homepage coming very soon. It's one of those where there's some real potential. I think based off how Amazon have been as a streaming service, and that's why there's so much disappointment. That Chris, I think me and you've said this before as a joke, that I've always said I'd rather Disney bought MGM than that, and just because they could prettily put Bond on the homepage, and I know how their interface works, and we know that what they've done with Star, I think, is magnificent. They've got all that content on, they waited, they got the rights, and they just put it all on at once. And I think that was the way to do it. They're transparent with how they do it. They're not taking stuff off. HBO Max, they take films off after a month and put them back on 3 months later, which is stupid. And I think this is where there are problems, is that Amazon's interface and how they've been is so bad that unless they're to invest real money into fixing that stuff up as well, I think they're in trouble for it. So they need a complete redesign. And that's just on the technicality point. That's not even the films in the thing. And what I kind of wanted to mention was we might as well talk really quickly about the rights to a couple of things, because MGM's had a very troubled history, to put it lightly. So many articles on so many bankruptcies, so many almost bankruptcies, and so many almost sales. I think a big one we were talking about, Christian, a little more than me, is that in the 80s, they sold most of their library, but at the same time in the 70s, they bought United Artists, who were a massive film company at the time. So we genuinely don't know what their library is like. We've got a couple of examples to say in a bit of the films they've said today, but I don't think any of us can genuinely say with confidence anything that we know would go on that service tomorrow morning if it started up.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up a link real quickly. I do actually just want to bring up Caleb's comment right there. Apparently, there is a toggle on the site where you can sort of like differentiate things. I didn't see that when I last went on there, but granted, I haven't had much time on Amazon Prime, so I just wanted to bring that up there. I'm going to bring up a link where I'm getting all this information from, because I can't take credit for any of this. I have skimmed this, but I'm going to go into it in a second. So that's the link going across there. I do recommend all of you go and check that out. It's quite a lengthy article. It's on the New York Times, but it does go into everything. So I'm just going to leave that running a second. So this is directly from there. It says that MGM's vast production lot and pre-1986 film library were sold off decades ago. Sony Pictures now occupies the lot, and Warner Brothers owns classic MGM films like Singing in the Rain, The Wizard of Oz, and Gone with the Wind. So this is where it starts to get complicated, because now you start to think, which things do they actually own? Because it sounds like, the films were kind of torn apart and sold left, right, and center, really. So those companies like Sony and Warner Brothers still have those films by the sounds of it. Not to say that MGM doesn't have a lot of content, because it still absolutely does. It has some big names, but it's like this weird in-between stuff, which is very intriguing.
Sorry, I've got breaking news in the last 10 minutes. Jeff Bezos has released a statement. Are you ready for this? We're looking forward to reimagining and developing the deep catalogue of MGM. The acquisition's thesis is simple. MGM has a deep catalogue of much-loved IP. With the talented people from MGM and Amazon, we will reimagine and develop the IP for the 21st century. People who love stories are beneficiaries. Well then, I think once again, the next big high-up, the highest high-up at Amazon is called it IP twice in one paragraph. So I think that's everything we need to know. That's probably going to assume everything. This is the guy that's building a $500 million yacht that's so big it's going to have a second yacht that's smaller to come out of it. And if you didn't think he'd be the next Bond villain, at least he could legitimately put himself into it if he wanted to.
I mean, he looks like Blofeld anyway, so...
Cole's just made a really good point, actually, before we move on. I've noticed streaming services have started adding original movie to the films they have bought. Amazon didn't make Sound of Metal, but they want to make you think that they did.
Yes.
Absolutely right.
Mitchell's versus the Machines.
Yeah,
Netflix
I saw that as
film.
well.
I was like, you're not on a Netflix original film, because it says Sony Animation at the fucking start. And it's things like that. And I'm sure all of them are guilty that said, no, you can say distributed by Netflix. But I get aggravated because these are filmmakers that don't want to sell these films. These are their bosses selling them on to other places without them knowing. And then look at HBO Max. Denis Villeneuve won because they're not releasing Dune on HBO Max after saying they would. Because he said he wouldn't come back for the sequel. Simple as that. Part 2. It's a mess, and I think Amazon are like one of them that you can buy as many films as you want, and it's a shame because obviously we know film, and I think we'd look into a film like that, and there'll be many people that watch home that don't, and I think there'll be people think, oh wow, what's this great new Amazon film, without remorse. It's like, no, that's a Paramount film. It was just sold to Amazon because they were skints, and it's things like that do get aggravated, and you can imagine them slapping the Amazon logo on. I know they don't have the Wizard of Oz rights, but you can imagine like Amazon's Wizard of Oz, and it's the same film. It's potentially dangerous. So let's talk about something that's maybe more shortcoming. They've got a couple of films come out in 2021, and this article went round yesterday, which has been a big thing. They have confirmed that the 2021 releases from MGM will not be affected. They cannot be took off cinemas and added onto Amazon Prime only. Anything that was slated for cinema release is still going to get the cinema release. There are a couple, I think there's 3 or 4 of them, but the big 2 is, of course, No Time to Die, which we'll probably get into properly with all the Bond rights stuff, and House of Gucci, which is going to be one of the mega Oscar favourites for this year, the Adam Driver Lady Gaga film. And I was quite happy when I found that out. I don't want to get robbed of films from that. We know that over the last year, the Bond delays have been a story within themselves. We know that I think Eon offered them to Apple and Netflix for 800 million, was it? And they both declined. And there was me smug sadly saying, there you go, evidence to the world that streaming services cannot afford blockbusters. And that's exactly how it should be. So they were never going to turn around and say Bond's going to be on Amazon Prime on September 17th. They had no chance in the world, but it's nice to get that reaffirmation that isn't happening.
Well, we know with Bond it definitely isn't. We'll talk about Bond in its own section in just a second. So at least we know that that's in safe hands still. That's definitely still within the hands of, Broccoli and, her brother, which is great. But that's not to say that after these Oscar films have come out, that they might not next year, or in the future when there come to be more Oscar films come out, do they release them in tandem on streaming services? Do they do like a thing that Disney Plus have been doing with some films where you have to pay for a premium to get it? You can watch it in the comfort of your own home. We don't know yet. So at least they're honoring this agreement, but it does make you wonder was that in the clause? Was that in the contract? But once that's done, once this year's over, they might not after that. Just going to bring up a few more IPs, I guess is the word of the day, that they own. This is more in the TV realm because we'll talk about the films in a second. So they've got The Handmaid's Tale, which apparently is gearing up for a 5th season. There's apparently a spin-off sequel series in the works. That's going to be a big one for them. They've got Fargo now. Caleb's clearly a Stargate fan. They've got Stargate, and there's a few films. And Vikings apparently now. I think Vikings ended, didn't it? But that doesn't mean that they could do some prequels. They could do some spin-offs. They could do something else. Big TV series right there. Massive. So I think
Fargo as well.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not going to be short of money. So at least in the TV realm of things, that could go in an interesting territory, bolstering their TV acquisitions. That's absolutely fair enough. We're a film channel. We do talk about TV shows sometimes, so I'm not so fussed about the TV side of things. I think that will be fine. It doesn't matter who's producing it. I am worried about the Middle-earth one. That'll be a separate video for another time. It's the films that I'm concerned about. So I think, should we dive into which ones they actually have the rights to and which ones are kind of in between?
I'm telling you now, the first one I'm reading off here is 12 Angry Men. I would be so pissed off if they reimagine 12 Angry Men.
It's going to happen, Tate. Everything on this list.
They're going to get so much hate for that because that is heralded as one of the greatest films of all time.
See, I don't think they will because no one remembers it, Tate. That's the sad thing. It's like a lot of these films are really old, and I'm thinking, what is this acquisition for? Well, it's clearly just to get more IPs under one roof, under Amazon. That's the only reason that they've done it. But in terms of some of these older films, these classics, which are classics, half of us haven't watched most of them. And we're a film channel. I do feel personally ashamed about that, and I do need to work on that, and I do need to watch more classic films. That's on me, but your grandparents aren't going to know how to work bloody Amazon Prime and watch old films on there. They're going to be watching it on their VCR player, which they probably still have, or a DVD or something that's much more manageable. They're going to want the physical side of stuff. And, if you then go to the opposite end of the spectrum where you've got teenagers, 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds, whatever, 20-somethings watching films. Are they really going to say, oh, yeah, Friday night and chill with 12? Oh, that sounds so bad. It's Friday night and chill with 12 Angry Men. There we go. There's a Freudian slip for everyone. But you know what I mean? Like, no one's going to say, hey, let's stay in and watch Raging Bull tonight. Like, it's not. Who is this for? Because I don't know. It's really interesting.
I mean, I'm down, but that's because I'm really into my films. But I'll just rattle off the other ones. They got Basic Instinct, Legally Blonde, Moonstruck, Poltergeist, Raging Bull, as you mentioned, RoboCop, Signs of the Lambs, Stargate, Thelma and Louise, Tomb Raider, The Magnificent Seven, The Pink Panther, and The Thomas Crown Affair. So there's a lot of stuff there.
They're the ones they name dropped as well, because they're the ones that we can guarantee say that they actually have said this today, so we don't have to worry about it being wrong. Because obviously we would have thought Wizard of Oz, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and all that stuff until Chris obviously mentioned the Sony purge of the 80s. But what's to stop Amazon trying to buy that stuff too? I'm not saying they're going to buy Sony. Sony, as we know on the news, exclusively sold their stuff to Netflix to be the first streaming home, then exclusively sold it all to Disney Plus to be their second streaming home. Whatever the hell that means, but that's just Sony for you in a nutshell. Thank God they lost the James Bond rights.
Do they have to pay extra tax on that, like for multiple houses for their stuff?
I just don't get it. Like, imagine Netflix, like, what do you mean there's a second house? And like Sony's like, well, it's a 6-month deal, mate. Did you not read the T&Cs? I can imagine it. But the little girl in Spider-Man 3, like the cell cost extra. It's like Netflix, like J. Jonah Jameson. That being said, I think those films, to me, off reading all of them, Tomb Raider we know is already getting a sequel. I think the big play is going to be RoboCop, isn't it? Come on, if they really wanted to make a statement, I think RoboCop's. Now, Chris, don't take this the wrong way. RoboCop is something that if they wanted to reboot it properly, there is a very, very interested audience. Now, there has been one reboot, but it was a 12A. There was a 12A. I actually still own it on the shelf behind me. Which is insane when I was looking the other day.
Do you own the original RoboCop, George?
No, I do. I'm actually checking. I
don't you do? Oh, okay, that's fine then.
No, I do. I don't think I've got a RoboCop 2. No, I don't. I've just got two RoboCop ones.
Okay, that's fair enough.
But the shit one's got Gary Oldman in. So, anyway, that being said, yeah, they're going to milk these. But I would be down for a RoboCop like R8 series because we were promised Dread like 5 years ago and it's still not happened. So at this point, that's the only thing that could be close. But no, shall we get into the big two?
Yeah.
First up, we've got Tate's favorite film series, the Rocky and Creed. There are 8 of them. This is the one where, you know, after Bond, it's Rocky and Creed. It's the face of all of it. And this one's more interesting because there are things in the pipeline. There are stories that have gone around. There are rumors. There are Instagram posts by Sylvester Stallone about a lot of things with the Rocky things, which are all sort of bleeding. And the big thing here is that Amazon would get, of course, the Rocky and Creed rights. Now, I was like to Chris, I was like, hold on. I'm pretty sure like Warner Brothers own it. Did a bit of digging. Warner Brothers own the international distribution for Creed for 3 films. So I don't know what would happen there. However, Michael B. Jordan produced Just Mercy, which went on to Amazon Prime. Michael B. Jordan produced Without Remorse, which also went on to Amazon Prime earlier this year. At the same time as both of those, Michael B. Jordan announced that he was signing a massive production company deal with Amazon Prime. They'd be the home for his productions, his TV shows, whatever he wants to produce moving forwards. It's okay. It's like Amazon gets Creed. It's like, okay, Michael B. Jordan is in the know. And then we have to bring in our dear friend Sylvester Stallone with his lovely Instagram posts about life and all this stuff. And then there was one about a month ago. So I've been talking with the streaming service, and I've pitched to them a Rocky prequel series, and it will involve like Vietnam, Man on the Moon, all of this stuff. And I was like, okay, Stallone, so you've like got chapters from your autobiography, which are probably things you remember growing up. And now you want to put like Rocky's eyes on them. But it was the fact he'd already had meetings with a streaming service, which I would assume is Amazon. I would assume that they have known for a while Amazon will be buying MGM. They went on sale last year. There were whispers amongst the year that other companies pulled out, but I think Rocky and Creed are the first ones they're going to absolutely eviscerate with. And Chris, I'm going to pass over to you for the Rocky prequel.
Well, we know that Sylvester Stallone likes to pitch a lot of projects that never see the light of day. I'm still waiting on a Cobra 2. Many years ago when he posted in capital letters, as he always does, Marion Cobretti return, #Cobra 2, ? I'm still waiting for a Cobra 2. So clearly a lot of his ideas are just that, ideas, and they don't make it to, fruition. And I hope this Rocky prequel series is one of those, because no one asked for a Rocky prequel series at all, in the slightest. Rocky as a character is not a worldly man. He's not particularly well-traveled. He's very much been living on the same neighborhood all of his life, and that's the entire crux of Rocky. He is a rags-to-riches underdog. It's the ultimate underdog story. No matter what lists tell you, it is the #1 underdog story. And why? Why is this a thing? Vietnam? The moon landing? Like, Sylvester Stallone's done Vietnam. It's Rambo, and it's great. Like, you don't need to go back there, Sylvester Stallone. It's just
Chris. It's the same character.
maybe this TV series is going to tell us that it's the same character. I don't know. I'm very worried about this. Rocky is a franchise that I hold near and dear to my heart, and yes, like, it can say what you want about Rocky 5. It is the low point of the series, but even as a low point, it's still a very watchable film, and it's good. I'm so worried. I'm so worried. I'm worried that Creed 3 isn't going to have Sylvester Stallone in it. That's the first thing that I'm worried about, but I can still see the third one being decent. But now that, especially with the rumors of there being a prequel in the works in the first place, and now this, talks of IP and reimagining, and just, it is their second biggest one next to Bond, I would say. I'm terrified. And I just feel, I can see it right now, looking at my Rocky films now, that's going to be the next franchise to go under, as a franchise that I hold near and dear to my heart, that's just going to be absolutely destroyed. Not looking forward to it.
I can see them milking it.
I'm going to add, I'm glad we've already got Creed, that they've already done the Rocky sequel 20 years later. I think that's a blessing that they can't now say, let's bring back an older Rocky to teach someone, because it's been done. It's been done well. And the third one, again, I'm going to be excited for, just because I want to see Michael B. Jordan direct. I'm very intrigued because he's been very good at producing so far, so I'm curious in that sense of things. But yeah, Rocky's going to be the first big one, of course it is, and I can't imagine them rebooting or anything like that. But you can just picture turning on. I don't know if it'll make noise like Netflix, but you'll turn on the homepage and like the Rocky noise.
Yeah,
and you're like, oh,
it'll be like a bell, like ding ding, like
yeah. And I just, it's like just Jeff Bezos putting himself at a premiere, and I was like, I just hope somebody beats the shit into you. That being said, I think we've got to, because there's not much we can really add to that. I think because Rocky, there's a lot of current news that adds to that. Whereas let's just get to the big one. Let's be honest.
Well, just before we talk about Bond, because this has been something that's been talked about for a while now, and they failed an attempt to do it this year. I know that, but they are probably going to try again next year. Amazon apparently wanting to buy the Premier League rights. They also want to buy the rights to the Rugby Premier League. They want to buy the rights to the Six Nations. They want to buy the rights to pretty much any sporting event. The way they're planning it out is because at the moment they're doing, I believe they're doing baseball games in America. A couple of the American football games are being put on there as well. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to make the sport globally accessible on the platform. I'm completely okay with that because they're not charging too much at the moment. I'm a massive fan of sport, and the Premier League, trying to watch it every single week on Sky, is expensive. It's ridiculously expensive. And Amazon only charging £5 for Prime every single week to watch a Premier League game, I'd absolutely chew someone's hand off for that. But it is them acquiring another thing and becoming part of that. Or they hold all the cards, they can put whatever price they want on it. So,
what I'd add to that is that the Premier League rights have already been done. Amazon, Sky, and BT signed a new contract 2 weeks ago, so they'll keep it the same for the next 3 years. So, unfortunately, that can't happen.
That's fair game, though, isn't it? They will outbid anyone.
Well, this is what I've said. So, what's happened now is that all the broadcasters, Chris is like, I don't know sport, but we'll try and make it.
This is where I just you just talk amongst yourselves. Have I got time for a bathroom break?
The broadcasters are scared of streaming services. Like terrestrial TV as a whole is scared of streaming services. That's very much an obvious thing. That why would people want to pay £40 a month to pay for this TV package when they can get it all for £8 a month online? In better quality, better pixelation, no faff, no adverts. And I think that's the big drawing point here. And where Premier League's got it wrong is the whole ESL, European Super League nonsense, where every broadcaster came out and said, oh, no, we really agree, we disagree with this is wrong. I was like, it's wrong because you can't afford it. Because Amazon would have bought those rights. Amazon would have milked you all. And they know that by, ironically, defeating the purpose of the ESL, which was if every football, they meant like it's not fair competition if no one can qualify for it. Yeah, Amazon, Sky, and BT sign a pact with the Premier League saying that we're just going to keep it the way it is, so no one new can outbid us for it. So they're all just wrong in their own mind. So that's a little sport tangent, but yeah, we know Amazon wants that. They're investing a lot of money into documentaries, sport documentaries, all that kind of stuff. I think they're doing Juventus this season. Yeah, they know their business model. They want sport rights. They're going to keep getting them. I'm dreading the day F1 goes on sale next. I think they're going to make its own streaming service, but Amazon are into sport, and to be fair to them, their sport. And when they've had football on their channel, their interface has been all right. They've handled sport well. Good.
Yeah,
but their handling of films is shite.
Yes. We were a film channel.
I would have honestly, I think me and my friends did the maths like a couple of years back. If 14 million people paid £10 a month, that would be the same money the Premier League makes as their TV broadcasting deals. So it's only a matter of time until the internet buys sports. And that being said, let's talk 007. Let's talk James Bond. So I've always been terrified because every time MGM goes on sale, I'm like, I don't want anyone else to have the Bond rights. I like the Roaring Lion. I don't want the Roaring Lion to change because I know he has a name. I think it's Leo, but I don't care. That is an image of my childhood, as it's to many people. I hate the new logo they did this year, where he's now a CGI lion, and it looks shit. It looks CGI. Chris has only just clocked it. Don't worry, my friend.
You talk amongst yourselves. I've got to check this out.
It's horrible. But
it's awful.
The big thing with Bond, they call this the crown jewel of collection. And we know last year that, we know that Apple have been sniffing around Bond before. We know that Bond is something where a lot of streaming services have always sniffed around and nothing's ever happened. And that is down to the power of the Broccoli family. When obviously the rights up in the 60s with Dr. No and everything, obviously Albert Broccoli obtained those Bond rights. And over the years, they've got more and more of those rights. Chris is just in the trailer because his eyes have gone. And yeah, Bond's fascinating because I'm going to go on a rant about ITV. I always say in these Bond views, I remember seeing this at ITV growing up. We're in 2021. Why are the Bond films on ITV? I know a couple of people that haven't seen Bond that would like to see Bond. I'm not lending them my box set. I'm just saying that straight away. No one's getting that box. It's my favorite box set I own. It's not Star Wars. And it's one of them where I'm like, oh, where can we stream it? Nowhere. Because ITV shows it on a Saturday afternoon like every couple of weeks. And it's always out of order. It's always shit. And I just sat there saying, Bond has needed a home online for a streaming service for years. Outside of England, distribution is perfect online. I think there's a reason Bond's getting bigger in America now, in other countries, because it has a distribution service. Here it's dreadful.
We've lost George.
Wow, time is...
George. There we go.
Does it cut me off?
You're back.
Does it cut me off? Sorry. They're at ITV.
Watch it, obviously.
There's just 24 Bond films on a homepage for anyone to watch at any time. It'd save me having to go up and get the disc. I know it's lazy, but that's still part of the problem. And it is one of those where Bond needs a streaming home. But the other side of that coin is, no. I'm not having Amazon producing a James Bond film. They are not getting the rights. They won't have the rights. And I've always been worried until I actually did my research. And I've been very, very pleasantly surprised. And I think this is the most important thing. So United Artists have had 50% of the James Bond rights. The time Broccoli made the deal with them. Albert Broccoli, not Barbara. And even though it's a 50-50 split, they finance 50%, they get 50% of gross. They have no power. They don't get a say on the Bond. They don't get a say on the directors, the soundtrack, any form of the production cycle. They don't get to do anything with the marketing. They don't get anything to do with the distribution method, which is the most important conversation because it means that the rights can't be determined by Amazon's 50%. Is the other 50%, which is Eon. Eon are the keys to the kingdom. I don't think they can be bought because Eon is basically the Broccoli family tree. It's Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli. And whilst those two are in charge of Eon, they are in charge of the entirety of the future of James Bond. That is their franchise. I called it a birthright on Facebook earlier to someone I was arguing with because it is. It's Barbara Broccoli was born in 1960. She grew up on the set. She got her first job when she was 17 and she's been producer and all this stuff. And the big thing from all of this to me is that Bond is safe. They paid $8.5 billion. And Amazon can't cast the next James Bond. To me, that is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I like that the rights are staying with the family that started it all. Really, I compared it really with like the Sony and Marvel thing. I guess this is slightly different, but where Sony do get creative control of more or less everything that goes into it, and they have the ultimate say. Essentially, it's kind of the same thing applies with this one. It does seem weird they've spent all this money, and I'd say that James Bond is easily sort of the biggest thing tied to this, and they're not getting any kind of input into it. But what they are getting is they're getting a home to put all of these films on there. Because we mentioned it earlier, Disney Plus is sort of like probably the best layout of all the streaming services in terms of how it's listed. And I keep imagining like a James Bond one of those, like a category for James Bond. You imagine all the stuff you could put on there. You could put behind the scenes on there, deleted scenes, featurettes, documentaries. And, Bond is one of those franchises that has so much history to it. And, even with the retrospectives, I feel like very late to the party with a lot of it, and I'm trying to play catch up. But there's such a deep history to even just the making of James Bond that they could even capitalize on that side of things as well. Whether Amazon will do that or whether it's just going to have to have the films on there in the first place and just leave it at that, that's up to them. But it is the biggest thing definitely out of this deal. I think that they're getting those, and I mean Bond's always going to be here to stay. It's not going anywhere, and especially after this one this year where it is going to move into new territory with a new Bond. Granted, Amazon don't have a say in that and don't get to have the input of that, but they are going to have the prestige of being the platform that hosts all of the Bond content. So, I guess there's method to the madness with it.
I find it fascinating that they've spent $8.5 billion on this. And let's be honest here, a Bond film will never make $1 billion profit. It will never reach that kind of milestone.
Skyfall did.
Oh, yeah. Skyfall. Did Skyfall make? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, apologies. 50th anniversary though, wasn't it? With it.
Oh yeah, fair enough.
Spectre made I think 900 mil.
that changes my tune a little bit. I was going to say, because it's crazy that they managed to spend that much and not get full rights to Bond and not have that full creative control. But now saying that, okay, that kind of makes sense. They kind of managed to get at least 50% of the stake. We don't know what the future of Eon's going to be, what's going to happen when Barbara Broccoli finally kind of moves on from it and stuff like that. Like, that's something for the future, but they've got their foot in the door, though.
Yeah, she got kids. It's safe.
You never know.
It's their birthright. It's their birth. Listen, any child. I know this sounds a bit insane. Anyone in that household that sells that'd be like the royal family, like William. Like, sorry, Nan, don't want Buckingham Palace. I'll sell it to Amazon. Never. They've been brought up. They are like deep militarized. That family, that legacy is British cinema. And the day a conversation happened about Eon being on the market would probably be the darkest day in British cinema's history, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think it could happen. Barbara Broccoli is very, very private. She's adamant. You know, I know some things the people moaning on Facebook, like, I don't want a James Bond cinematic universe. I don't want a female Jane Bond. I was like, the woman that cast James Bond has already said that there will not be a female James Bond. That hasn't come from a male producer. It's come from a female producer. So she will rather create characters that are better service. Why would she need to recast or rewrite somebody? And absolute kudos to her for saying that, because she chooses the next James Bond. So I think that's the spin. What I would say, I'm sorry, I'm going to change this into a hype speculation. If they were ever going to milk Bond, what I would love, I know this is really relevant to tonight's discussion, I would love a series where they adapt the books and set them in the 50s and 60s. You know, something that's not a film. I still don't really want it, but if they were going to milk it, and they would, I'd rather it was like a direct book adaptation into a miniseries. Won't happen, please. Keep making films. Keep doing it the way you're doing.
I would like, are you ready for this? I would like a series of Q short films about some of his failed experiments.
No, what they'll do is it'll be a Felix Leiter spin-off series about the American escapades and the American side.
Like Kingsman.
Yeah, you've nailed it.
Yeah, exactly, like Kingsman, yeah.
You've nailed it.
Amazon, if you're listening, don't do what I just suggested. Or Broccolis, don't do what I suggested.
And that's the thing. I think with the Broccolis in power, I'm confident. And I think because they have been on sets for so many decades, which is insane to think about. You know, 60's not even that much of an age of producer, and she's been working on Bond films her entire life. I think that's why I know that Bond is safe. But, you know, I don't think they'd be... they wouldn't need money. They're minted. You know, they get 50% of the money they make from these Bond films. They literally get to wake up one morning and decide a James Bond plot and tell the writers what they're writing about. It's incredible. So I think Bond is safe. However, had the Broccoli's... and, you know, Albert Broccoli could never have signed over to his daughter. He could have sold it back in the day, but he never did. And I think Barbara Broccoli is the same. I believe she's got a daughter that's done directing in the past. So maybe there's at least a production side of it where she got those rights. Maybe she directs herself, but you know that she's got a film background and a current working on film industry. So I'm comfortable with Bond at the moment, but I wouldn't be surprised if, like, Jeff Bezos kept, you know, flashing cash around or trying some elaborate Bond villain thing to try and get those Eon rights. But I think Bond's the big one. It does deserve a streaming home, but, you know, the concept of waking up one morning to what's the new James Bond film and it not being a cinema, it being like at the end of my bed on this TV, is a horrible thought. And I'm glad that cinema experience is staying.
Same.
Yeah, absolutely. It's where it needs to stay. Have we covered... there's clearly a lot more IPs that are under acquisition, but they're definitely the big ones that we wanted to mention anyway. I guess sort of like final thoughts on it, and obviously we'll pass over to everyone else. We have been, you know, had people commenting throughout this, so thank you to everyone that has joined us for this second stream tonight and commented as well. But let us know your thoughts on Amazon's takeover of MGM. Are you worried? Are you ecstatic? Maybe you're completely on the other end of the spectrum. I think for us, we're very much, well, I know I'm sort of like erring on the negative side of things. I always err on the negative side of things. That's just who I am until they prove otherwise, until they prove me wrong. Then that's what I'm sticking with. But, you know, things are changing in the movie world, and this is definitely a big change. But we want to hear your opinions on it as well. I just need to sort of wait and see what happens with all of this nonsense, all of this Rocky prequel series nonsense before I can feel settled. But Yeah, speaking of Rocky, actually, we did a retrospective series on the Rocky franchise from last year. We do have a very nice playlist for that, so do go and check that out. But more currently, and on topic as well, James Bond. We are a quarter of the way through our James Bond retrospective. Loving it. It's every Tuesday at 8 p.m., and we will be back, Tuesday next week for Diamonds Are Forever. Granted, probably not a great Bond film if you jump in onto the retrospective, but nonetheless, we'll still have a great discussion on it, go in depth into that film, and they're really fun to do. So, yeah, that's kind of tying in with MGM, I guess, now, and Amazon at the moment. So I think that's everything, unless anyone has anything else to say, closing thoughts or anything.
My final thought, stock up on your Blu-rays. Amazon doesn't release their films on home media. Get yourself a Rocky box set, get yourself a Bond box set. You might not get the chance again. That's my conspiracy theorist sign off.
George, where are you going to be buying these Blu-rays from?
H&B. I don't buy films off Amazon. I'm good. Yeah. I don't buy films off Amazon. I'm right.
Oh yeah, this is the second time that I've heard that this week. So maybe I need to follow suit. Maybe there's things that I don't know about. Carl, really quickly, does this mean the rest of the movie studios will be sold off now as well?
Is next. Paramount is next. I tell you.
And that's Disney will be like, money. We want Incredible Hulk. Thank you very much. Good night. Yeah. Done. Yeah. But God help us. We will probably be back next week with another stream when the next movie studio gets sold off and bought by someone.
We're going to end up with like 2 or 3, maybe. I feel like some of the smaller studios have the legs to survive at the moment, like A24. But I mean,
Warner Bros. Has just sided with Discovery, so the two will combine into one megalomaniac shit show.
It's like a Transformer.
Well, yeah, I mean, they haven't even released, until Warner Brothers changed their streaming service name to not be called HBO Max, they don't have a chance.
Yeah, no.
It'd be like if Disney called it like National Geographic, but it's got the Star Wars on it. Pathetic. That's my final thought.
There you go. Well, that can be the comment. That can be what everyone comments after this video. Let us know which movie studio you think's next. Up for grabs. Let us know. But that'll do it from us. I think we're all streamed out after tonight with the 2 that we've done. This has been good fun. Thank you to everyone who's pitched in the comments as well. And we'll see you guys on the next video. Take care, everyone.